Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by COOP Ale Works live today on Twitter Spaces. So for those of you who are waking up with us this morning right now after last night's draft, you guys are real ones, and thank you so much for tuning in. Live from New York, we've got Nick Gallo, who was covering last night's draft in Barclays Center. We've got a lot to recap, Gallo. I'm excited to get into it today.
Yeah, we do. It was quite the night inside Barclays. Draft night is endless possibilities, all wrapped up in a show that lasts a few hours. And it's a life-changing moment for all of these players. They get to find out not only where they're going to spend the next few years of their lives, but where they're going to have to move next week and figure all of this out on the fly. They get to start their NBA journeys, and the level of gratitude in the building is through the roof. And so it's a joy to be able to be there and kind of be a fly on the wall as you watch all of that unfold.
It was so cool seeing all of the incredible content that came out of this night last night from our content team. Shout out to the Thunder content team who was putting in a lot of work last night. Just a quick recap for our listeners who may have missed what went down for the Thunder in the draft yesterday. The team walked into draft night with a handful of draft picks, including 2 lottery picks, and walked away with 3 lottery selections and 4 overall newcomers into this Thunder roster. With the number 2 pick, the Thunder selected Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga, and with a trade with New York, acquired Ousmane Dieng as well out of NBL. At number 12, the Thunder selected Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, not to be confused with the Thunder's 34 pick, Jalen Williams, out of Arkansas. So 4 new faces added to this Thunder roster. Nick, I want to go straight into what you saw from these guys in your firsthand perspective inside of Barclays Center. You were there when Chet heard his name called. I just want to hear this story on how that went down.
Yeah, so I've got some really interesting anecdotes that I was able to pick up on last night. And I think that the best and funniest one starts with Chet Holmgren, who was drafted number 2 overall. And he pops up so quickly. He hugs his parents. He gets around the table. He goes up. He shakes Adam Silver's hand. He goes down media row. He does all these little interviews. He talks to Dennis Scott and Michael Grady, who are doing the in-arena interviews there at Barclays Center. And of course, he's showing off of his outfit, the all-black suit. He's got the watch. He's got the chain that, he's talking about how it symbolizes betting on himself. And, the number 7, which is what he wore for Team USA, 3 and 4, which was his number at Gonzaga. And then, of course, he, as he's standing up and he knows that the crowd is listening to him, he says, and I got the hat to match, and it was just like a perfect way to punctuate everything that the draft is about, just sort of a little bit of the swagger to it, the gratitude for being drafted, a guy that is going to Oklahoma City, a place that clearly he really, really wants to be, and, getting to kind of have his moment in the sun. And so, I continue to follow him around. We were in the Arena Bowl, follow him back of house. He does press conferences. I was able to grab him for a one-on-one interview with OKCThunder.com, and we are going to roll it out on our at OKC Thunder social channels. And it was nearly 30 minutes after he was drafted that he realized that his phone was missing, and he had left his cell phone on the table. And so the phone had this like magnificent journey back to him. It went from his table where his mom and his agent were sitting, went past the ESPN stage where of course Woj is sitting and he's breaking all the picks and news, and went past Lou Dort, his new Thunder teammate who happened to be in the stands, and then finally made its way back to Chet where he grabbed it with that 7'6" wingspan that of course he's excited to bring to the Thunder. And he had a mission delivered from some of his people back at the table. He needed to call Thunder GM Sam Presti, and he needed to call Thunder head coach Mark Daigneault because he'd been without his phone for quite some time, and he had some official calls to make to really cement the beginning of this partnership that should hopefully be very fruitful when it comes to development, growth, and just this incredible competitive journey that he's about to embark on with the Thunder.
What an incredible anecdote. And I think this speaks to just the grandeur and the craziness of draft night. For a 19-year-old to leave their phone on the table in such a critical time. Everybody's probably blowing him up, trying to congratulate him and talk to him and say congratulations. For him to leave that on the table and just be in the moment. He did say that in one of his interviews. He's like, I'm just trying to be in the moment and soak it up. That says a lot right there.
No doubt. Yeah. And so I think it just shows like Chet was absolutely all invested in just like soaking it all up, as you're saying. And I love, that anecdote bookended with towards the end of the night, I saw Chet's parents walking down, having this like silent walk hand in hand down this quiet little hallway that was completely away from the madness, the chaos, the parties that were happening inside Barclays Center with all the families and parents. And it just so happened that they were having this silent walk, just kind of soaking in the reality that their son was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft that night. And, the gratitude that comes with that. And they happened to walk past this small little green room where Ousmane Dieng was sitting in kind of like a holding room until the trade between the Knicks and the Thunder was able to be officially announced. And so it was so cool to kind of see that moment, that silent moment that the Holmgren parents were having. And then, Ousmane is there waiting patiently for the news to break, for him to be able to trade that Knicks hat in for a Thunder hat. And eventually he was able to do that. He was able to hop on the phone with Sam and Mark as well, and kind of have that full circle moment there at the end of the night was great. And of course, we got a chance to see Jalen Williams too. He was there at New York. So we were sort of scrambling at picks 11 and 12, trying to figure out how we were going to get our little one-on-one interviews with both those guys, especially while Chet was still doing his circuit. So it was quite the night. And of course, Jalen was super pumped too. He said it was probably one of the first times that he'd like happy cried before. And so as he was going through his intricate handshake with his brother that you all may have seen on the ESPN broadcast, he said he actually almost messed it up because he had tears in his eyes and he couldn't quite see the way that he normally does. So that was a good anecdote.
If there's ever a time to happy cry, when your NBA dreams are coming true, that is the time to do it. That is incredible to see. And I have to say, after watching this draft, this was probably the most emotional draft I think I've ever watched when it came to guys just tearing up and hugging their families. I was getting a little emotional watching it, just seeing these guys and their dreams come true for the first time. Gallo, I want to get into a little bit more of what you learned from these guys in their actual one-on-one, being able to sit down and talk to them. But before that, I've got to ask you, because you were there in person, what did you think of the fits?
The fits were pretty incredible. The thing that I couldn't take my eyes off actually was Jalen Williams' earrings. There were these like dangly cross earrings that just sort of, they bordered his face perfectly. He has this great smile with his cheekbones sort of popping, and I don't know. It's like it was a perfect like little accessory to finish off this great suit that he was wearing, and he was so happy that his smile was brimming the entire time. And his hair was like majestically just poofing the hat up on top of his head. So there was this whole thing going on with Jalen Williams Santa Clara. I should add the 12th pick in the draft. There was so much going on with his accessories around his face that I just couldn't look away.
It just created a beautiful picture that you just had to keep your eyes on. Love that.
Exactly.
Love that. Yeah. All right, let's get into just a little bit more about some of the things that you learned from these guys when you were able to actually sit down and talk to them. And I specifically want to ask you about Chet. He was the first interview that you had that last night. What were some of the things that stood out to you in your one-on-one with him?
Just his competitiveness, his readiness to come join the Thunder in terms of understanding like the organization, understanding the players that he's going to be playing alongside. He said, look, this is the easiest part is going to be me getting connected with Shea and Josh and the other playmakers on this team, because they already know how to get players like me the ball. And I think, you know, in a little bit when we turn our transition to you and your experience, it's something that Sam Presti ended up talking about too, is just he's such a unique player that he can fit in very interestingly with this group that's already assembled. We know about the shooting ability. We know about the defensive versatility and prowess down low as a shot blocker, but also, you know, the ability to roll, the ability to catch and finish. And so to be able to be kind of a play finisher to go along with some of these playmakers that the Thunder has, in addition to being versatile and able to put the ball on the floor and push after rebounds, it's going to be fascinating to watch Chet mix in with this group. And he was aware of that too, just to kind of get back to your question.
Yeah, and one thing that I think that stood out in the things that we saw on the broadcast side, just of whatever we were able to see with Chet, his kind of his go get itness. I don't know that if that's not it's not even a phrase, but that the competitive fire, you could see that with just how he was like, you know, OKC, let's get to work. That was his mentality, and so I could kind of see that coming through in the little that we were able to see him speak last night during the draft. So Gallo, you've got one-on-ones that are on OKCThunder.com with Chet Holmgren, Ousmane Dieng, and Santa Clara's Jaylin Williams. Those are up. You can go listen to them for yourself. That is going to be an incredible opportunity for you to get to know these players a little bit more who are going to be wearing this Thunder uniform.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at CoopAleWorks.com.
The number 2 pick in the 2022 NBA draft, Chet Holmgren here alongside me. You're coming to Oklahoma City, and I got to ask you, that moment when Adam Silver calls your name, what's going through your mind? What's happening inside you as you're hugging everybody?
1,000 emotions, all good ones, but it's definitely a whirlwind. You know, your mind's racing, but you know, like I can't even describe it. You know, I have 0 words, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
You've worked so hard to get to this point. As you think about the hours that you've put in, the time that your parents have spent with you, and taking you to basketball games and practices, just what's your kind of level of gratitude for everything that you've been through along your journey?
Man, it's immense. You know, I have so much gratitude, not only for my parents, but, you know, all my coaches, friends, family along the way. You know, they've had to sacrifice just like myself, you know, sacrifice time with me, sacrifice, you know, other things. And for this to, you know, finally pay off like this, it's definitely, you know, it's amazing.
Thunder general manager Sam Presti has talked about, you know, drafting guys, selecting guys that will fit Oklahoma City, that OKC is going to be like, I get that guy, and that players will understand OKC and that fan base. How excited are you to get to work and kind of play for those fans, play for this city?
I'm ready to put a jersey on right now, lace them up, and get on the court. So I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. Well, we're talking about outfits. I got to ask you. Tell me about the jacket, the chain, everything you got going on here tonight.
All right. Well, 100% my ideas. I had a lot of help along the way to make it a reality, but I went with the black on black, almost kind of tuck style suit underneath, and I got a velvet overprint paisley design on the vest as well as the suit jacket, and along with it I got a pair of Gucci's on. I got the watch, I got the bracelet, I got the chain. It's a pair of dice with the numbers 3-4 on it. That's my number. Adds up to 7. I wore that with USA when we won a gold medal. 7's also a lucky number, and you know I'm big on betting on myself. So you know I felt like I had to throw that on for draft night, and then I got the cherry on top, the OKC Thunder hat right here.
The hat to match. I love it. You know, I don't know if you're going to keep up this style on the walk-ins to each game, you know, 82 nights out of the year, but you're going to have some competition on the roster from a style standpoint.
Yeah. Shea got some drift, so you're right. I got some competition, but at the end of the day, you know, my focus is going to be on the 82 basketball games. You know, I'm sure I'll wear some outfits that look pretty good. But, at the end of the day, it's not going to take away from my focus on the games.
You mentioned competition, but that's what you're known for on the defensive end of the floor, on the offensive end of the floor, just as a basketball player all around, competitive fire. You're coming to a team that's got that in spades as well. Just your thoughts on the fit in OKC on the floor, just from a mentality standpoint.
I think it's a great fit. Again, I see myself as a competitor, and, OKC has competitors as well all the way down the roster. A lot of great players, and I feel like any team I've ever been on, I've found a way to fit in with the personnel on the team and see how, I can, help improve and emphasize other players' skills as well as help them emphasize mine. And it's going to be the same situation here. I'm going to look how to fit in with other guys as well as stand out.
A lot of emerging young guards in this league on the Thunder roster already. How do you feel like you'll be able to play off of those guys come next season?
I think that'll be the easiest adjustment is, playing off guys like Josh, obviously amazing passer with crazy court vision, and, he can, get to spots and really manipulate the defense and find teammates for easy looks. And same with Shea, he can get, pretty much anywhere on the court that he wants to, and, he can flat out score the ball, and that'll, help open up the floor for other guys like myself.
I know we'll get to see you on Saturday in OKC. You'll get a chance to hold that jersey that you were talking about. What's the next 48 hours look like before then for you, though?
I'm going to go to dinner with my family, my friends, and I'm going to, enjoy this moment with my people. And, I have probably a pretty early flight to Oklahoma City tomorrow, and probably a presser. Probably see you again there. Yep. Exactly. Sure, I'll see you there. And then after that, my plan is to get straight to work.
Awesome. Well, I know Thunder fans are going to love to hear that. They love seeing you in this Thunder jersey as well. Chet, congratulations. Thank you so much.
Very much. Thank you.
That was Gallo's draft night.
Tell me about your night, Paris. I got to know.
It was a little crazy. I was holding things down here in Oklahoma City while you were in Barclays Center, getting all that intel for us. And my night had kind of two elements to it. And the first element, I was at main event at one of our season ticket member draft parties. That was really, really cool, getting a chance to meet with the fans. And you could tell there was a lot of energy in the air, and folks were really, really excited about this draft. So I got a chance to talk to some season ticket members there, and Rumble was there, Thunder Girls. It was a whole fun night at main event. That was my first stop of the night.
So Chet actually talked about Thunder fans after the draft, and he said, and I'll quote, "Super rowdy fans that are diehard for their organization. I'm proud to represent them." And just kind of hearing that sentiment, like, what was your experience at main event with all of these fans that were out there, like, fired up for draft night?
It was literally, they were fired up, and we all know that Thunder fans are known for being, hard Thunder fans, right? They love the Thunder, they love this organization. And so there was a really big show out for the folks at main event. And I was telling folks about, what to look forward to in the draft, and, kind of previewing the night, and there was just clapping, there was cheering. Folks were, just really, really excited about the night itself. And it was really cool to see. Like, even the kids that were there too, they were just like oozing with a lot of energy. You could tell they understood what was going on, and that this is a big night. And so it was just really cool to see from, the young 5-year-olds in the room to the grandparents. Everybody kind of had the same amount of energy. So that was really, really encouraging to see. And after I left, I'm pretty sure Michael Cage came in right after me. So I know the party wasn't done when I left the room.
Yeah. The stakes got raised then when Mike Cage showed up.
I know. I think the value of that whole event just went up as soon as Michael Cage walked into the room.
All right. So then what'd you do after that?
So at around 6:50, 7 o'clock, I hopped in my car and I drove about 10 minutes from main event to the Thunder practice facility. And it was kind of a packed house in that green room, the press room at the Thunder practice facility. That's where I watched the entirety of the draft. And obviously on my laptop, making sure I got all the information that I need, getting the story ready for after the draft ends. And the reason for that is because we had the opportunity to talk to Sam face to face, and the Thunder's vice president of basketball operation, Will Dawkins, after the draft ended. So that was a really cool opportunity. This is my third draft with the Thunder, and the first time that I've been able to see, Sam and Will together and talk to them after the draft. That was a really, really cool night. And one of the biggest things that came from Sam's press conference, and it's in my article that is now up on OKCThunder.com if you want just kind of a full recap of the night. One of the biggest things that came out of Sam's press conference was the fact that this is kind of the first opportunity for the Thunder to develop some continuity within the team. The guys that are on the roster now have been putting in the work. They've got some shared experiences, some shared scars now. They've been growing and developing together. And so the 4 guys that the Thunder added to the roster last night can now easily fold into that process and kind of take away the lessons from the last season and the season before, and start to sustain that continuity, which has been the goal really for the Thunder this entire time, is to have that sustainable continuity, which is incredibly valuable for an organization to have.
Yeah, it's actually stunning to see the amount of talent that's on the roster right now, and recognizing this is only the second draft of this like next generation or iteration of the Thunder. And, that's what you have to do in Oklahoma City. This is something that Sam has laid out many times, that you got to build through the draft, and you've got to layer talent on top of talent on top of talent over the course of multiple years in a row. And then you can start to build this continuity, this chemistry that he's talking about, where the players from last year's draft class are setting the tone from a work ethic standpoint for what this new set of 4 players that just got drafted last night are going to have to live up to. And so one thing that Sam made sure to reiterate, which I think is an amazing point for all Thunder fans out there listening, the gains that are going to be made by this Thunder team next year are most likely going to be coming from the returning players on the team. Over the course of time, you can look and see rookies, for sure, they can have an impact, but the biggest impact in terms of performance on the floor is going to come from these guys like Shea and Josh Giddey and Trey Mann and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl and Lou Dort and Darius Bazin, the guys that have been through NBA seasons before, and not only that, been through them together and understanding how to play alongside one another over the course of an 82-game season. So I think that we can all look forward to, yes, Summer League and getting to see these rookies for the first time, but also how those guys try to integrate themselves into what's already beginning to percolate in Oklahoma City in terms of an identity, a fiery competitiveness, and never say die attitude, and how they can mesh with the guys that are already on the roster that are living up to those sort of core values.
And another thing that just kind of builds on that point that you're making, one other thing that Sam mentioned, and he mentioned this as well in the lottery back in May, over a month ago, is that when it comes to the talent acquisition process, it's a 3-step process, right? You have to learn, where you're going to be selecting. That was lottery night. That was in May. You have to make your selection. That was obviously last night with the draft. And now there's still even one step left in that process. And that's the longest and most extensive part of the process. That's getting to work and developing the player. And that involves not just the staff, but like you're saying, all of the guys that are already on this roster, helping to create that environment where these guys can be successful, transferring those lessons and making sure that these guys are, incorporated and can build within the team. So that 3-step process is now on step 3, and the Thunder's looking to get to work now.
Yeah, and not only is this the longest part of the process, it's also the most important part of the process, because it's the only part that you can truly control. Like lottery night, you have 0 control. Draft night, you have some control. You can choose who you're picking, but you can't pick 1 through 60. You don't get every single guy that you possibly want. It takes 2 to tango in terms of trades and all that kind of thing. And so now this part of the process where you have to get guys into your market, you have to make sure that they understand the identity of the organization moving forward. You have to make sure that they can mesh, that they can take advantage of the opportunity, they can be maximized as players and people inside the Thunder's walls. That all of that is crucially important and going to play the biggest role in the long-term success of the organization is what the team and what these players do with the opportunity now.
Absolutely. Very well put. Before we wrap up, Gallo, I think we should do just a quick rundown through these guys of what the Thunder fans can expect from these new faces on the roster. What do you say?
Yeah, I love it.
All right, let's go in order. Let's start with Chet Holmgren, obviously out of Gonzaga. A rare combination of size and skill, that 7-foot frame with a 7'6" wingspan and his perimeter abilities. Gallo, what can Thunder fans expect here?
The most unique player in the draft. And when you are drafting in the top 3, which is something that the Thunder has, talked about being important as they, reshape this organization, that they have this next generation of the Thunder, these are the types of players that don't come around every year. He's an extremely skilled player for his size. He's one of these guys that had a massive growth spurt. And so, of course, the ability to transfer some of that ball handling ability, the skill in when he had that growth spurt is critical. And it's something that we'll get to a little bit later with Ousmane Dieng that Will Dawkins, VP of basketball operations, also mentioned was, that ability to maintain the skill level in addition to growing and having that size and the wingspan is a really fascinating concept for some of these young players. What we saw at Gonzaga with Holmgren was the shot blocking, the ability to be an elite rim protector in drop coverage. But, in college, some of the rules are different. The lane is different. And so the ability to defend in space is also important with Chet. And he's shown lateral quickness and the ability to stick with guys and use that length functionally. It's one thing to be long and tall. It's another thing to be able to actually get that into the game. And then the other thing we saw with Chet was just a versatile offensive player, a guy that shot nearly 40% from 3, a guy that, can push pace in transition. There's a great anecdote in a story I was reading by Tim Cowan that there were times in games where the opposing team would be shocked that he was pushing the ball up the floor, and all of a sudden they turn around and he's at the rim, running coast to coast with the ball and able to flush home a dunk because the opposing team was sort of like in awe for half a second and just held up for just a second, not realizing that this guy was able to run the floor and to handle the ball the way that he is. So I think as you look at this Thunder team's 5-out style, the goal to be able to be less patterns, more rhythm on offense, Chet is a guy that can fit in with that because he's a player that can feel comfortable in a variety of different situations on offense.
And one other thing about Chet, from the person side of the draft pick, Will Dawkins pointed out that this is a guy who's going to come in here and compete. But not only that, he's unselfish. And just to quote him from the press conference last night, he said he's going to compete with his teammates. He sacrificed to be on a good team and did that willingly as one of the top players in high school. And he wanted to join a team and be about winning. And this is a guy that, and the Thunder talks about this a lot. They don't draft players, they draft people. And when it comes to evaluation and scouting, they're not just looking at the skill level that they bring to the floor, their talent level. They're also looking at their character and how they're going to represent this organization and fit into the organization as a whole as well.
Right.
So that was something that really stood out about Chet during this process. And also something, as we move on to the next draft pick, something that stood out about Ousmane Dieng as well. This is a really interesting anecdote when I asked Will Dawkins about it last night. He said, Sam gets a lot of credit for the work that he does, but I don't think he gets enough credit for how many gyms that he is in year round. And he was in the gym in Paris with one of the Thunder's other scouts in France when they saw Ousmane Dieng when he was just 16 years old. And what has stood out to the Thunder as they've tracked his progression over the years is that his disposition when he navigated leaving France, going to Australia to play in the NBL at 19 years old in a new country, playing against grown men for the first time, navigating that change, navigating that the culture change too, and the disposition that he had was really impressive for them to see. They also pointed out that they know a lot of people who have been around Dieng and know Dieng as a person and his character, and they all speak pretty highly of him and how he handled himself in that situation.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because the varied connections that Dieng has is really fascinating. We went to INSEP in Paris, which is the same place that Theo Maledon played when he was there. He plays in the NBL for the New Zealand Breakers. That's the same league that Josh Giddey played in before he came over. And Dieng talked about not only, getting to watch Josh play and thinking that, it was really sort of inspiring to see him make that journey to the NBA, but also how excited he was that there are some French speakers on the Thunder team.
Yeah.
Dieng does speak English, but he's probably a little bit more comfortable with his French right now. And so I think that's going to be a cool environment for him to come into, where it's just been sort of uncanny how many French speakers the Thunder have had over the last couple of years. And Paris, I know that's been like one of your small little things that you've held on to for the last 24 months.
It has probably been my favorite sideline hit that I've ever done in my life. It's just talking about the amount of French speakers in this Thunder locker room. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, but Dieng, he's a highly skilled player, a versatile player, a guy that's still kind of coming into his own and filling into his body. He's so young, 19 years old, but he has some of these innate gifts that Will Dawkins was talking about: the passing, the vision, the court instincts. And so, again, as we think about this Thunder team that is hoping to have playmakers at all 5 positions, this is a guy that you could see at 6'10", potentially being able to slot in, be a competitor on both ends of the floor, defend multiple positions, and then also be able to keep the ball moving, keep plays orchestrated. And we talk about like there being a couple different things important for players to have. One for sure is shooting in the modern NBA, but the playmaking is what helps you get the other type of most efficient shot in the NBA, which is layups. If you have more guys who can put the ball on the floor, can make the pass, drive, kick, react, attack, closeouts, that's how you get layups in the NBA. And those two things, the 3-point shot and layups, those are the most efficient shots that you can get. And all of those are created when you have 5 guys on the floor that can be playmakers and set teammates up or attack the rim and get to the bucket themselves.
And that's really a skill set, kind of that all-around ability on the perimeter. That's a skill set that he had when he was just 6'3" out there as a young kid, and he kept all of those abilities, as Will Dawkins was pointing out, the shooting, the passing, the court vision, all of that still at 6'10". So a really interesting prospect, really excited for him to be in Oklahoma City. And when you're talking about, all-around players and guys who can kind of do a little bit of everything, that also brings us to Jaylin Williams. Santa Clara's Jaylin Williams, yes. That the Thunder selected at number 12. And just to quote Sam Presti here, he said he's a really natural basketball player and he can pretty much play anywhere on the floor, a really thoughtful player. Just Nick, as you look at this guy and the prospect that he is, what stands out to you?
Well, he's a 6'6" player that shot nearly 40% from 3 last year. And so, I mean, you just think about the modern NBA. That is a player that you can only there are many teams, they can only get that type of player in the draft. A guy it's a big physical wing who is a knockdown 3-point shooter. I mean, that is what every NBA team covets. And so for the Thunder to come away with him, in addition to Holmgren, in addition to this really fascinating prospect in Dieng, this is why the Thunder has done what it's done in terms of stockpiling draft picks, to be able to go and get the guys that they want. And you start the night with 2 lottery picks, you end up with 3 without having to give up any of your own picks moving forward. This is a really fascinating way to start to layer in that talent, as we talked about. And you can absolutely see a guy like Jaylin Williams seamlessly fitting in alongside Giddey and Shea and Trey Mann and Lou Dort and Darius Bazley, and these guys that are very switchy and interchangeable. I mean, you're now looking at potential lineups where everybody is like 6'6" or taller, and you can just switch everything on defense. And when guys play make, there are willing shooters who can knock down shots on the perimeter. So Williams is a fascinating selection here just because of the type of player that he could grow into being. And it's a type of player that every team in the NBA wants and needs.
Yep. And this transitions perfectly into the other Williams that the Thunder drafted. This is the Thunder's last selection of the night, and it was at 34. It was very early in that second round. 4 picks for the Thunder in the top 34 of this draft, and that leads us to Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. And Nick, this is a defensive player. He was all defensive team selection in the SEC for Arkansas last season. Snatched away over a steal and even a block per game with the Razorbacks last season. What stands out to you about this Jalen Williams here?
Toughness. It's something that Sam Presti, Mark Daignault both mentioned at the end of last season, that this team needs to come back like a tougher team. And of course, it was the youngest team in the league last year, so some of that's going to come with physical maturation. But there's also, this toughness that is developed over time. It's a mentality. Chet Holmgren is a guy that plays with toughness, even though he is not doesn't have this like thick NBA frame. He plays with that competitiveness and toughness. Jalen Williams is a guy that's got the physicality and he's got the toughness to go with it. And so he's a functional defender. You think about, a guy like Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who came in last year, who was able to defend multiple positions, to be able to switch out on the perimeter, but to be able to also play and drop coverage and play with that verticality at the rim. A guy like Jalen Williams has the ability to, with some time and seasoning at the NBA level, be that type of kind of nasty, big defender that can really help seal off defensive possessions, either by taking charges, which he did at a really high level at Arkansas, or cleaning up the glass, or just being the guy that sort of mucks things up in the middle of the floor. So pretty fascinating guy to bring in, especially when you pair that with the high skill level players that the Thunder got in the lottery selections, those top 3 picks, to bring in a guy who's kind of a change up, a curveball from that, is a great way to build a well-balanced roster.
Something else to look forward to is the nicknames that will come out of the next couple of weeks, and especially Summer League, when all of these guys get together, because you've got Jalen Williams and Jalen Williams. And so there's got to be some nicknames to be able to differentiate on the floor.
Yeah. Everybody who came into the draft talking about Nikola Jovic, and how he would, mesh with being in the league with Nikola Jokic. Nobody had any idea that both Jalen Williamses were going to end up on the same team together. So I think the biggest challenge right now is in the hands of Mark St. Ives, Wilson Taylor, the NBA, and the Thunder, in terms of what they're going to do with their jersey numbers and with the names on the back of their jerseys, to try to fit all those letters in and to be able to differentiate between the two of the guys on the jerseys. So that should be really fun to figure out. And I think we'll probably find out on Saturday what's going to go down with that when we get all of these 4 players into Oklahoma City for their introductory press conference.
Gallo, that was a perfect segue into what is on tap for this Thunder squad in the next coming days. So like you mentioned, these guys are coming to Oklahoma City into market to be able to meet their fan base, the community, and the folks in the front office and the staff face to face. That's going to be on Saturday at 3 p.m. We'll have a live stream of that press conference. Gallo, you and I will be on that live stream as well. We'll also have a podcast coming out of that day. So you're going to want to be able to go to OKCThunder.com, check out all of the content from that day. And of course, go to the Thunder Basketball Universe, wherever you find your podcast, and check out that podcast on that day. Get a chance to know these guys a little bit better. What a night for the Thunder. 4 new faces on this Thunder roster. That also sets up a really, really fun summer league and time of, training camp for these guys, because it's going to be really, really competitive on this roster. And that's something that Sam Presti pointed out. That's a good thing to have, is a lot of competitiveness up and down the roster here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this transition is very quick between now. We're going to have the introductory press conference, and then some of these guys are going to be headed off to Salt Lake City for the first summer league. Then they're going to head to Vegas for that longer extended summer league. So the work begins immediately. Every single one of the guys that I talked to last night, that's exactly what they said. Like, look, I'm going to celebrate this tonight, but we're hopping on a plane tomorrow and heading to OKC, and the work has to begin. And that's the mentality that the Thunder loves to hear. It's why they think of people first when they make draft selections, and maybe talent is of course important, but a little bit secondary to the character and the type of person that you're going to get. So it'll be great to see all those guys holding up their Thunder jerseys on Saturday and then getting to work back in OKC starting next week. And Paris, this has been so much fun to do the Thunder Basketball Universe on Twitter Spaces. I love it. This is a new chapter for us.
I know. We're entering into a new frontier. This is great. All right. Well, that wraps up today's podcast and our Twitter Spaces. For those of you listening on Twitter, thank you so much for waking up with us and staying here with us this morning. And for those of you listening on the podcast, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to the Thunder Basketball Universe wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to check us out on YouTube and subscribe there as well. To our producer, Matt Bishop, thank you so much. And for those of you listening, thanks so much for listening. Thunder up, and we'll catch you later.